Here's a quick summary of some of the altcoins that were hit. Atom, and I haven't verified this. This is a tweet, but he said Atom. Again, all in my opinion, most of these are all shit coins. But Atom went from $4 to 0.001 cent. SUI, SUI went from 3.40 to 56 cent. Link went from $22 to $8. ADA went from Cardano went from 0.8 to 0.3. So a lot of what he called 100 blue chips nuked 8%. I wouldn't call any of them blue chips, to be honest. I don't think blue chips should be used in that context.
There's one blue chip. Don't make me say what the blue chip is. There's one blue chip. There's a second best.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Bilal Zaidi and Trung Phan. Jack's on the road right now. He might jump in, but we'll see. Right now, Trung, what's going on, mate? You got the Peaky Blinders hat on. Fresh from the UK. We're gonna break that down later.
Do you have one of these?
I used to rock it a lot. I don't have one anymore, but okay. I want to get one back. I used to rock that one a lot.
I gotta tell you the truth. When I was looking in the mirror and at the store, this was in Edinburgh. I kept on calling it Edinburgh, and like people were just like looking at me.
They call Edinburgh.
Dude, I mean, listen, I've heard both. I've heard Edinburgh and I heard Edinburgh.
But what did they say when they were there?
Well, I've heard of. I mean, dude, you can't find two people in the UK that speak the same English.
Yeah,
right?
well, especially Scottish, they be speaking different language there, exactly, man. Love it though.
And I'm just like, well, let them know I'm from Canada, so I got my own thing going on. I also heard
got your own pronunciation.
Edinburgh. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was.
Yeah, we say Edinburgh, but no, it's. I want to hear about it, but we're gonna tease it out later
because it doesn't. The spelling is not even close.
Oh yeah,
to
it doesn't
Edinburgh.
make any.
It makes no sense.
I know it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. It's like Leicester is another one where a lot of people say Leicester.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to Leicester Square, which is a big popular place in London. All right, let's quickly tell people what we're talking about. We're going to come back to your UK because you were in London and Edinburgh. We're going to get you try for the UK people. Trung tried his first Greggs, which is a staple classic place. I know Jack used to go weekly back in the day. So we're going to get that later in the show, but we're going to talk about OpenAI's $1 trillion chip deals. Zaid and I touched on it last week, but a lot of people have been asking for Trunk's take.
And there was a new deal that happened yesterday.
Right? Yeah, Broadcom deal. Yeah, everyone's getting a deal. Very Oprah meme right now. Then we're going to talk about, we do need to touch on the crypto sell-off. It wasn't just a crypto sell-off. It was more panic in the markets on Friday. I think it was 11th, right? October the 11th.
Yeah.
Crazy day. A few of my friends who are kind of big crypto folks were like, "Oh, I was playing paddle for 2 hours, came back and they're looking a little broke
that's a problem with crypto, man. You play paddle for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
you might get liquidated.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, but we do want to break that down because it was on paper the largest liquidation day in crypto history, and a massive bounce. Yeah, I will say a lot of that was perps, people's positions,
perpetual futures.
Exactly, yeah. So we're gonna explain that best we can. Things have bounced back a little bit. Today they're pulling back a bit. It's not just crypto. The whole markets were down on Friday, but also the crypto is open 24/7 and takes on.
Why were they down?
Sentiment.
Which is relevant. Is our last topic.
Yeah, rare earths. So we're gonna talk about rare earths as well.
China v. U.S. trade war that never ends.
Exactly. Yeah, still going.
Well, of course it won't end. This is the defining conflict of the 21st century, right?
Exactly. And then lastly, let's see if we get to it. There was a crazy video from Anduril EagleEye launched, which we don't really have much to talk about it, but just the video was kind of wild. It looked like
if we don't get to it,
Call of Duty.
You people should Google Anduril EagleEye. Just do that.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks wild.
Yeah.
It looks wild.
And we will talk about Greggs and Scotland. I got a good Scotland story after. But let me just before we get into OpenAI, I'll just add this is. We talked about last year. I took my mom to Paris, first time she'd ever been, and then I took her to the UK for the first time. For the listeners, if you can carve out some time to spend time with your parents and never taken them, I'm saying I wish I'd done this 10 years ago.
100%.
I was just too worried and involved in my own life, and then forgetting the sacrifices that my parents had made. And yeah, it's nice, man. That's all.
That's amazing.
Let's not get too weepy.
She had the time of her life,
people.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a good
time.
Was
she sipping a little whiskey out there? Or is she a
dude? She, I mean,
Scotch drinker?
Mama Fan, obviously not a big drinker, but she enjoys a little tipple. So we were actually letting her try some of the whiskeys. We got a flight of whiskeys, but we were like, Mom, you can have like 1 or 2 sips. because we don't want you blasted out here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of Mama Fan just laid out now after having a whole shot of
No, but literally,
whiskey there.
I mean, well, that just means that your boy T Stunner got a little bit extra gassed because he had to hold
we know
down,
you got
right?
the dad drinking. I've been with you, man. If it, you got the, I've got to get back in 12 minutes to put my
Bro,
kid to
give me
sleep.
give me
vibe.
that flight real quick.
There we go. No, I do want to hear about it. So, but let's get into, and we'll revisit the Peaky Blinders hat. But let's talk about the $1 trillion chip deals. Zaid and I did touch on it briefly last week, but even he said, I want to get Trunk's take on this. So just for the frame of this, let's explain some of the deals going on, but more broadly, like, what's your take on this? Is this just circular accounting, like I said last week, or is it really just a win-win-win? Is it just propping up the whole market right now? Is everyone just trying to get a little juice, that OpenAI halo effect, or NVIDIA halo effect is the kind of other one? So like obviously XAI and NVIDIA announced the deal as well. So yeah, what is your take on this? And do you want to break it down a bit?
Yeah, 100%. The on the is this circular side is I wouldn't say it's necessarily circular, and I'll explain why. But what is interesting here, this is the main point. The entire industry, I mean, previously it was resting on the shoulders of NVIDIA. But right now with these deals, it really is OpenAI. And the point of all these deals, and the three key ones we'll talk about, are AMD, which effectively gave up 10% of its company to guarantee OpenAI as a customer. NVIDIA is a $100 billion investment into OpenAI, which will be staggered at 1 gigawatt increments. So every time OpenAI installs 1 gigawatts of data center compute, that's about $10 billion a gigawatt. It's actually about 30 to 40 a gigawatt. But NVIDIA will be investing about 10 into each tranche. We'll discuss that. And then Broadcom is creating a custom chip. So a chip that's different than the AMD and NVIDIA chips. And that one sounds like just a straight up a deal. Like there's none of this like investing inside circular stuff. It's just we will pay for chips from Broadcom. And I mean, we'll just go through the money pumper.
People probably know what Broadcom is, but it's a semiconductor. Like, what is it in
so
the stack
Broadcom's
compared to
roll-up.
NVIDIA?
Yeah, so Broadcom's a roll-up of a number of semiconductor companies, and they do a lot of custom chips. So, for example, they do Google's TPU. So, Bilal's former employer, that was fast that we got to slip that in right there. The tensor processing unit, that is made with Broadcom. So, just to give an example. And then obviously NVIDIA and AMD have their own GPU chips. Broadcom is more custom is the key word here, custom. So the announcement for OpenAI yesterday that they're working with Broadcom on a custom chip has been 18 months in the works, according to Sam Altman's announcement, the CEO of OpenAI. And Broadcom pumped 10% on the news. So just to give you guys an update here of why OpenAI is the central cog in right now the AI hype cycle, it's because they have 800 million weekly users, okay? And I think the estimated revenue this year is $15 billion. So by far, OpenAI is the highest revenue, most consumer, like the linchpin, even though they're losing money hand over fist. They're projected to lose $5 billion this year, and Sam Altman says they'll lose money up until 2030. And over that time span, in the next half decade, he projects over $1 trillion in data center spend. So everyone's wondering, how are they getting this money? So a lot of things that are happening is that there's a lot of financial engineering. And don't think of that necessarily in a negative sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like, when you think about money, all money is, the money at its core.
Sugar power Teslas.
Yeah, it's sugar power Tesla.
No, it's energy.
It's time traveling, right? It truly is time, because when you do a debt instrument, as an example, when you go buy a house, it's a form of time traveling. You can't afford a house at that point, but the bank will give you the money to afford that house that you would have taken you 30 years to pay for, right? But now you just have to pay him interest for the right to do that. So Altman did a lot of interesting interviews last week. Actually, I would point you guys to the A16Z interview. And a point that he brought up was this. He's beginning to see the value of him as the investor, like really seeing his career as a Y Combinator, the head of Y Combinator, come to fruition here. And the reason he said that is because Think about it. Capital allocation. Right now, AI is the data center build is about 2% of America's entire GDP. It's responsible for over 50% of GDP growth in 2025. So when you think about that, it's the linchpin right now of the entire economy. You got to do some financial chicanery to make it happen. I mean, if we're being honest, right? Because OpenAI makes $15 billion a year. They can't support a $500 billion bailout just from that. They got to find other ways. So Bilal, I'm going to ask you to read some of these off. Okay? Please read off every recent deal that OpenAI has done. So this is from my co-founder Parham. Read these off. It gives the name of the public company.
Cut off for me, by the way. So
okay, yeah, that's fine. So it gives the name of the public company. Okay,
Oracle
yeah, go ahead.
$300 billion data center commitment for OpenAI. Oracle gains 36% on the news. Shopify and Etsy added to ChatGPT checkout feature. Shop up 6%, Etsy up 16%. I'm assuming that's like a day.
Yeah, the day
right?
of, right?
Yeah.
The day of.
It may even be more after that. Nvidia intends to invest $100 billion to OpenAI, up 5%. SK Hynix, I don't even know honestly too
SK
much about
Hynix
that
and
company.
Samsung.
And then Samsung agreed to partnership with OpenAI for advanced memory chips, up 10%. Samsung up 4%. AMD to sell OpenAI 6 gigawatt worth of chips for AI data centers, and also give the startup warrants worth 10% of AMD, up 23%. This last one I can't see.
Broadcom announces the custom chip membership go up 10%. And then let me give you one more from this morning. We're recording Tuesday morning. Walmart is now integrated into ChatGPT.
Yo, who's next? Costco? We need a Costco OpenAI deal.
3%. Okay? Walmart's up 3%. I think Walmart's what, a $600 billion company?
What's the Walmart deal? What are they going to
You can buy, you can check out Walmart products through ChatGPT now.
Oh, got it. Okay.
This is
that
the
makes
world's
sense.
largest retailer. I think they do 600 built revenue, maybe more. 500 to 600. I think actually them and Amazon or whatever, 1A, 1B. Whole point I'm making is OpenAI is a linchpin because they have the customers. I mean, and the customers in this case are the users of ChatGPT, right? They're going to cross 1 billion probably by the end of the year, weekly after users, which puts them in the same class as, it's insane, dude. This is in 3 years. They've gone from
velocity
zero,
of what they're doing is wild. It's
unbelievable, dude.
The launch after launch, and even just perception-wise, it's just relentless. It's incredible.
No, you're right. It is crazy. So in these bubble situations, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Bilal, how do you pay as a public company, as a corporation, as a $500 billion corporation? What are your options to pay? They've committed now to $1 trillion in data center buildouts. So between AMD, Broadcom, and Nvidia, that's 26 gigawatts. And each gigawatt, as I mentioned, is about 30 to 40 billion. Okay, so it's about $1 trillion plus of data center buildout. And a key point I want to make here. So Jonathan Ross, the founder, one of the co-founders of the TPU, the Google chip, who has his own startup now, Grok, GROQ, which you probably heard of.
Is that Chamath is involved with
they're
that
mentioned
one?
on the All In Pod a lot.
Yeah.
But he made a very good point on Harry Stebbings' podcast, 20 VC, 20 whatever, Harry Stebbings. You know what I'm talking about. He goes, the constraint right now is chips. And he said, people understand that, but he's making a very salient point. He's saying that if NVIDIA could give OpenAI and Anthropic double the amount of chips they have right now, although Anthropic's working with actually Amazon and making their own custom chip. Let's say NVIDIA could just tomorrow create double their chip production. They're doing about 5 million chips a year, their high-end chips for AI. If they could make 10 mil, he's basically saying they would give it to OpenAI. OpenAI would immediately double their revenue. And because the demand is insatiable. And we know it's insatiable because ChatGPT throttles users, right? They're throttling users on reasoning tokens. The whole point of GPT-5 was to send tokens to the basic models and the reasoning models because they had to find a way to like not just use up all their compute capacity, right? Image generation, Sora with the videos. I know you guys talked about Sora last week. I know you guys had some good examples.
Even since then, Trung, I need your take after this because some of those
we
videos
can talk
are
about
wild.
that. But I'll give you something about the Sora thing. Think about the timing of the Sora launch. They launched Sora, completely gave 0 Fs about the copyright. You couldn't do Taylor Swift and Sydney Sweeney, right? It's like everything else was open season. But the reason they did that, to my estimation, they wanted to demonstrate why there was so much demand for compute. So right after they started announcing all these other deals, people are like, okay, well, what it's like? What you're gonna have 100 billion in chips from AMD, and then you look at Soria, like, okay, I guess it makes sense because people are going crazy for making these custom videos, right? And I mean, it's the reality. Is like we joke about it as slop. Go look at TikTok or Instagram right now. They're all Sora videos. People want this stuff, right? And like I have a lot of reticence about it. I don't. I mean, there's a lot of creativity that comes out of it, to be honest. But a lot of it is just a ton of slop, right? But anyways, to these chip points and to your earlier question, is this circular? So I'll give you NVIDIA's side. For NVIDIA, and we actually talked about this a couple weeks ago, it makes sense to secure the future, the largest customer base right now for your chips, and looking down 10 years, will be OpenAI likely, based on the consumer traction it has, right? You want to make sure that they can keep buying and funding the data centers. So when I asked you earlier, Bilal, what are the ways that a corporation, let's say you were a $500 billion corporation, what are basically the 3 ways you can fund a build out like this? Like, what are they?
Oh, you mean just cash?
Yeah, how do you
stock,
get money? How do you get money in the door?
Stock. I don't know. What's the third one?
Equity. You raise, you sell a piece of your company for equity. You raise debt, or you have revenue, right? There's not many other options. So Altman is basically pulling all those levers right now, if you're watching this. So let me explain how he's pulling all the levers. The equity one, we understand. They raised 40 by the end of the year from SoftBank. There's equity. They're giving up part of their business and future profits in exchange for money up front and investment, right? So debt. They haven't gone out and done debt yet. However, their partners have. Oracle, who just took a $300 billion order. Again, these are orders. They're not completed. An order from OpenAI over the next 5-10 years to deploy whatever, 10, 20 gigawatts, right? They'll be working with AMD. They'll be working with NVIDIA. They can actually now go out and raise debt because if banks and private lenders have confidence that OpenAI can be the consumer use case that can guarantee billions in whether that ends up being ads, they take share from the 300 billion that Google does a year in ads, or you get subscription revenue up to 50, 100 bill. Maybe let's call it 50. That's what Netflix does a year in subscriptions. Let's say that ChatGPT gets to Netflix level. All right, most people don't want to pay. That's reality. But then you have ads. Can OpenAI be $100 to $200 billion business between a subscription and ads?
Definitely.
That's Sam Altman's job. This is why he's such an incredible salesman, right? He's convincing the world that these are possible. So the lenders now will go to Oracle. That's how you're getting debt, right? Same with NVIDIA. NVIDIA now can go to lenders. They're sharing some of their credit, like their credit worthiness to OpenAI. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, Trung, can I ask, have they broken out revenue? Because you're talking about subscription ads. That's like consumer side.
They have zero ads right now. They're almost zero.
Yeah,
ads
I mean, in the near future, they'll probably have some sort of ads, right? So, but they were hiring for it. I saw. But outside of that, a lot of it, like every company in the world, is paying for like API access or whatever else. Like back, like the B2B side. Have they talked much about that?
Anthropic seems to be. That's why Anthropic is such a big winner on the coding side. But to your point, OpenAI is still going after that because they're going after everything. Because they have. I saw you had posted
like the biggest customer token or whatever, thing
the
that
top
got
30
leaked or whatever.
Yeah, the
Duolingo, like all these different.
Yeah. Duolingo, also obviously Cursor, the coding one, HubSpot, which I'm sure because
so-called rappers, right? Like meaning
exactly.
W, not Rick Ross rapper, meaning like a WR rapper. Yeah.
So I mean, this is a balancing act. And it can to the question of is it circular? If you actually think about it, it actually isn't insane game theory wise to be doing this. Like NVIDIA giving $100 billion to OpenAI is not insane, right? Because they need to they could sell those chips. Here's the point: they don't need OpenAI to buy $100 billion worth of chips from them. There's so much demand for NVIDIA chips. For the next 5-10 years projected, they will find a buyer, right? We're not even considering nation state levels, right? Like Jensen's out here talking about, like Saudi Arabia should have a sovereign data center. which is a understandable sell, right?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, it's a dude Uber salesman, right? So I think what the way it can unwind is this: if what the unwinding happens is if people lose faith in this vision of OpenAI and generative AI being able to eat into kind of Google's share and actually create new productivity growth that doesn't yet exist, right? So it is certainly a balancing act and it'll unwind because if these stocks start going down, that means their ability, sales start going down, people lose faith, they won't be able to follow through on these commitments, right? And the whole thing just unwinds. There's certainly risk of that. But today, in like fall 2025, at the point where everybody's pot committed to this game, like you have Larry and Sergey, who still control Google, saying we will burn Google to the ground to win AI, right? Zuck has clearly demonstrated he will do anything to win this game.
Didn't he say, I'm happy to burn 100 to 200
he's like
billion
100 billion.
dollars
He's more risky to not do it, is his point. Right? And I'll give you
say a lot of this is like, obviously no one wants to spend 200 billion on something that isn't productive for them, but a lot of it is the rhetoric you need to go out with, right? This is like as much of a battle on the mind share, you know, it's like the story of it all. Like every company needs to be saying, we're going for it, right?
Yep.
And so like so much of it at this point, like you said with Sam Altman's deal making side or investor side coming through, a lot of these guys essentially like what politicians have to do, right? Like you have to be saying this is the vision for the company, because especially public companies, so much of it is just sentiment based. But anyway, yeah.
No, but you're right. This is the level they're at, which is why it can all unwind, right? Because and the point is, and then Jeff Bezos, you probably saw it. Jeff Bezos had an interview at the Italian Tech Week, and he said something that went very viral. He said he believes that we are currently in what he called an infrastructure bubble. And what that means is that there's a monetary bubble, which is 2008, the financial real estate bubble, where you had a lot of financial engineering that just led to inflated asset prices. But there wasn't, nothing was being built in the real world. He's saying that this is an infrastructure bubble. We actually will have a lot of data centers built, a lot of new energy coming online, a lot of chips deployed. Now, a problem with the chips is that they actually depreciate. So the depreciation schedule is 4 to 5 years right now, but the speed that NVIDIA works at, like a chip from 5 years ago, is going to be way worse than a chip today. Having said that, you can still find uses for older chips, like inference doesn't need as much as like the cutting edge for the training stuff.
Do you explain that part? Why is inference okay for using older chips? Like obviously in China we saw that with DeepSeek they can use. Yeah.
I wouldn't say necessarily it's okay. I'm just saying it's less of a like when you're doing these massive training runs.
It's not like World Cup in Qatar where they've got stadiums full that not going to be used again.
So you can find. Well, take a thing. Let's say that you wanted to do, to your point, like you said, right? You wanted to do like. Let's say that they've been open sourcing older models, like GPT, whatever. I think basically GPT-4 was open source. You probably don't need that to be as performative as a GPT-5 model on inference. And again, for the listeners, the training and inference are the two uses of chips primarily in the AI industry right now. You train with these massive runs that we all heard of, like $1 billion, $5 billion, $100 million runs. So you train, but then you do inferences when you're actually querying, you're asking for things from the actual model. So, you could have an open source model based on like GPT-4, in 2 years. That's not going to be as demanding on a chip requirement maybe as the latest cutting edge training run, right? So those chips will still be put to use. But I think the key, and we'll talk about it more on the rare earth side, is the deployment of energy. Is like if America and the rest of the world figures out how to deploy energy, because at the end of the day, that seems to be the gating function, right? I mean, Zuck said it was a gating function a year ago. He's like, he looked up and down the entire AI stack. He's like, yeah, NVIDIA is constrained on how many chips it can put out, but actually energy is even a larger constraint. So at a minimum, go back to Bezos. Bezos brought up the 90s as an example. He mentioned the fiber. We talked about it tons of times in this podcast. This massive telecom build out is almost worth $1 trillion. That went bust. Almost no investor made money in telecoms, but we were left with a ton of fiber in North America, right? That's a good thing. He also mentioned biotech. In the 90s, there's a biotech bubble. almost no investors as a group did not make money, but a lot of life-saving drugs came out of it. So, I want to separate AI as a bubble, which almost certainly it is a bubble. The part is, will people make money? Maybe, maybe not. Will we be left with something? I think certainly yes. So just to kind of put a pin in it.
Very different to just Trung real quick.
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
Very different to pets.com vibes 99.
Yeah, but even then, right? They were just too early. Like Webvan and pets.com are too early. And
not throwing shade on pets.com, but you know what I mean?
No, but I mean
no, it was like everyone was raising with literally no usage or like any
OpenAI is making $15 billion, right? Like OpenAI is making $15 billion. Anthropic's making $6 billion. Does this justify $1 trillion capex? Maybe not, but they're making real revenues, to Bilal's point. And then, Bilal, the last thing I kind of want to put a pin on is like the wrestling that's going on here with OpenAI's announcements is we know that NVIDIA is the kingmaker right now, most valuable company in the world, right? It's up, 20x. 15x in the last 5 years, right? The battle right now, and this is from Ben Thompson, go read Stratechery. He has a great piece on this. He's comparing this to the Windows versus Intel in the 1980s. Windows had the end users. Intel's was the chip, right? ChatGPT has the end users. NVIDIA is the chip. ChatGPT is trying to diversify, is trying to take away some of NVIDIA's bargaining power, right? By working with AMD as an example. So AMD has captured almost zero of the AI run-up. Almost 100% of it has gone to NVIDIA. But now OpenAI, the most important AI consumer product in the world, is saying, we trust AMD to serve eventually 1 billion users, right? They're keeping AMD in the game, right? They're keeping AMD relevant. Without this deal, this is why AMD had to give up 10% of its company, right? It's like AMD could be gone in 10 years or a total afterthought. So they had to make this bet. Dude, to give up 10% of their company, how crazy is that?
Yeah, it's pretty, right? From your biggest competitor, basically, right? So
a startup. So and
at one point, I don't know the history, Trung, but AMD, I'm assuming. Do you know the market cap sizes? Like, was AMD way bigger at some point?
AMD was competitive with NVIDIA probably 5-6 years ago.
Intel,
market cap size.
Originally.
Yeah, and AMD
but that's when
came
CPUs were the most important thing. Where GPUs
and
became more
AMD dominates the server. The AMD's eating into Intel's server market, which is to your point, data centers and servers. So this actually tells you what's happening, how powerful a position OpenAI is in. But NVIDIA still has leverage over OpenAI, which is why it became an equity investment from NVIDIA, right? And then the Broadcom deal, again, is diversify again, is to have another option. And it also weakens NVIDIA because OpenAI has so much usage, it actually knows the exact thing to make a chip out of, right? Like NVIDIA's chips are very programmable. They're very customizable, but you're still customizing them to different use cases. And they're more broader use cases. OpenAI knows exactly what it needs. So it could make, in theory, if they can execute with Broadcom, a much more optimized chip, right? The same way that Google has the TPU. And the same way now that Anthropic, which is a quarter owned by Amazon, is making a custom Trainium chip with Amazon. So don't sleep on Amazon either. But I think the larger point here that's being made, if I were to summarize it all, is that OpenAI and NVIDIA are the linchpins of this market. We didn't even mention xAI, right? That also just received a $2 billion investment from NVIDIA.
It also had right?
Had an interesting structure. It was an investment into a special purpose vehicle, which were to buy NVIDIA's chips, and the xAI were to rent them. Again, it's more financial engineering because to fund all this is just insane right now. So, yeah, it is a bubble. There's no question about it. It's a lot less circular when you dig into it, though, because they're basically trading financial capital for reputational capital, for future dreaming, pull the future forward capital, and the idea is like it all just the thing is it can't stop moving. It just has to keep moving. The models have to keep getting better. There actually has to be deployment and use cases found because a long-term loss of of kind of confidence will lead to a big unwinding, which I think is a good time now to jump into what happened on Friday.
That's a perfect transition. I just want to pull this up from. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
This is from DD Das on X, and this was just the most valuable private AI startup. Just was looking at this earlier, and I thought it was quite interesting because I honestly didn't even know all of the names. Some of them I mean, most of them you would have heard of. OpenAI, right, for people listening, latest valuation 500 billion. Does that sound about right, Trunk? The latest, yeah. Year over year growth 100%, annual revenue 12 to 15. I've also heard. Number 2, XAI, as you just described. You said XAI isn't even being talked about so far from what we discussed. Their latest valuation was 200 billion. That's crazy. So they're valued even more than Anthropic. Isn't that kind of wild? I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously with
the argument you'd make with that is it's that you're paying the Elon premium, as in a couple ways that this could pay off for XAI. Okay, so XAI is building a world model they just announced, and they actually, again, it's a Tesla connection, right? They have real world data and information. Let's keep that chart up. It's good to walk through these.
Yeah.
So the XAI play is, can they find the edge of like build a world model, because Tesla has the access to this proprietary data, right? This world data, and this imaging of the real world and the motor vehicles and understanding the real world. There's that play because XAI and Tesla merging sounds inevitable at this point, right? And especially with the Optimus being the Optimus robot, self-driving being kind of the two main Tesla bull cases. Anthropic has made a big coding play. So OpenAI is big on the consumer end. Anthropic has really pivoted over to the coding play. And not to say that OpenAI isn't competing with them, because they are. They're competing everything. Same with Google. So OpenAI and Google. I was
going to say these are just private AI startups, so it doesn't include Gemini in here, obviously.
But I think that's a good wrap on those. And then we could talk about what happened on Friday as like an example.
Perplexity down there too. Jeez, they're still going hard over here. But yeah, and then Midjourney right at the bottom there, 15. But yeah, so let's come back here. Perfect segue into what happened last week, Trung. So was there anything else on that before we move on?
No, that's beautiful. Let's go.
All right. So what happened on Friday? Were you already back in Canada by Friday, by the way? Where were you when this all went down? Because it was a pretty wild day. I was on the
plane.
Oh, did you have Wi-Fi or not?
No, I didn't. I came down and I saw the memes. I'm like, yo, what is going on? But dude, walk us through what's going on, bro.
Yeah, so I mean, let's start with the Trump tweet, right? So I think that's probably the most the thing that really like got it all going. I don't have all the tweets lined up, but just to summarize from what I remember, what did he say? It was something along the lines of, it was something very bearish.
No, they're slapping 100% tariffs on China on November 1.
Exactly.
In response to China rolling out very, very broad rare earth restrictions. They went from just like banning certain rare earth exports to now saying if you are a service that uses even 1% of Chinese-based rare earths, you need to get a license, right? This is similar to what America's actually done with the semiconductor industry. So this is without precedent. But that was kind of what was freaking people out.
Yeah, and then, but the time of it, wasn't it like close to Friday? Was it Friday morning or Friday evening? Because I was also out that day.
It was after markets, and then people spotted that there was a new Bitcoin wallet that magically appeared that shorted Bitcoin 15 minutes before the True Social tweet. Take with that what you will.
I'm going to pull that up actually, because this is where it brings us into the crypto side of it here. So this is this one you're talking about, right? So this tweet says, "This is unusual. 30 minutes before President Trump's tariff announcement yesterday, a whale took a multi-million-dollar short in Bitcoin. 1 hour later, crypto saw its largest ever liquidation, and this position was liquidated for 192 million in profit. Did someone know?" And since then, this was several days ago, October 11th. So this is 3 days ago. Since then, there's been a lot more digging going in. CoffeeZilla, CoffeeZilla goes hard, man.
He was not pleased.
So let me CoffeeZilla, for people who don't follow, this guy goes hard in all of the shenanigans on the internet. So CoffeeZilla said the liquid whale shorting BTC and ETH yesterday, was placing shorts up until exactly 1 minute before Trump threatened tariffs against China. The last short was placed at 8:49 GMT. Trump tweeted at 1 minute later, "What incredible luck," in air quotes, right? So yeah, obviously the meme was going around. Obviously this is a joke, but a lot of people were like, "Oh, this must be Baron Trump."
Oh, dude,
like,
it's not a. I mean, whether or not, but we're not gonna say who it was. But like, come on, it's like.
I mean, that was Now the actual person seems to be this guy. Did you see this already? By the way,
you sent us something this morning, right? Somebody basically tried to say it was some type of technical analysis that led to
sorry.
It's like, yeah, we looked at the 30-day convergence chart and decided that right at this moment we should.
Let me pull it up. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So, and again, honestly, I'm not even technical enough. So, it's a guy who's held $10 billion of Bitcoin for 10 years without touching decides to go short Bitcoin because of 4-hour MACD divergence. Honestly, I don't even know what I'm assuming is some technical analysis.
No, MACD
whatever.
was moving average. Okay. Yeah, no, but it was like ridiculous, right?
I'm not a technical analysis person, but this was the guy. Garrett Bullish was the guy.
No, we're not calling. I think he's just.
I mean, he's the one published. He's publishing.
No.
Himself,
I'm saying that I don't know if that was.
Yeah, we're not accusing
himself.
him because who knows? Yeah, but this is the guy that he's been sharing this. And he went through a whole thread. We don't need to go through the whole thing about...
No, but the joke is that it was a technical analysis play, which everybody's like, yo, bro.
Yeah, technical analysis on a phone call, it sounds like. But anyway, crazy stuff. I mean, I'll be honest, it was just like a bit of a crazy day because, yeah, when I saw that, I'm not that emotional with stuff like this, especially with crypto, as we've talked about. Like, if you've been dealing with crypto price movements for the last, like, however many years... you're used to like massive swings, right? Like 30% in one day, 50%. If you're holding altcoins, like you've gone from 99% down, right? Like this is the sort of stuff that's you probably get used to. I will say someone shared this. Ted Pillows said, here's a quick summary of some of the altcoins that were hit. Atom, and again, I haven't verified this. This is a tweet, but he said Atom. Again, in my opinion, most of these are all shit coins, but Atom went from $4 to 0.001 cent. SUI, SUI, went from 3.40 to 56 cent. Link went from $22 to $8. ADA Cardano went from 0.8 to 0.3. So a lot of what he called 100 blue chips nuked 8%. I wouldn't call any of them blue chips, to be honest. I don't think blue chips should be used in that context.
There's one blue chip. Don't make me say
what
the blue chip.
There's no second best, exactly.
There's no second
and actually, Trung, this is what I was going to say to you, right? Before the pod, we started talking about it. I said to you, and you said save it for the pod. Going through this over the years, right? Like going down that much, like honestly, can be quite heartbreaking to some people, right? Like if you've got a significant amount of your stored energy in this, right? Like it can really hit you. And what happened here for a lot of people is they were, using leverage, and that's where they got hit, and they were completely wiped out. And so lots of people got wiped out. But for context, Bitcoin just went down to the price it was at 10 days before, roughly. Like by the time it settled around 110K, right? So it did go down a little bit more than that, maybe 108. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it went down about 10%.
Do you know the details of the actual how these things were liquidated? I think it was just a lot of these platforms do auto liquidations, right? And people were just levered to the tits. Yeah,
levered to the tits, exactly. And so I do think it was that, but there were some people reporting that they had stop losses that weren't that didn't work. And I think there was like some coins, like some platforms where there wasn't enough liquidity, like there wasn't enough market makers.
No, Bilal, you nailed it. That was the problem. Is like people learned two things. A, you're levered 50 to 1, no bueno, right? And then
exactly.
B is even if you're not levered 50 to 1, these exchanges, as you had said, they're not fully backed. As in, some of these exchanges are executing and matching these short and long trades, and these perps you mentioned, like kind of these future derivative products. They don't even have the assets on hand, right? It's just like it was some of the sketchy kind of FTX stuff. Is you just kind of, I mean, think about it. What's the interface here? You got a UX. You're pressing a button, and you're assuming platform X will actually have what they say they have underneath the hood, right? But a lot of these places don't do that because in a non-situation like what happened on Friday, Trump dropping the 100% tariff tweet, new trade war concerns, 10% sell-off in Bitcoin, which frankly is not that crazy. It's pretty standard.
Yeah. And I would say the stock market, like after hours stuff, was also 2 to 3%.
Yeah, it's happened. It's not
that
the end.
Happens,
it's not.
It happened early in the year, right? So to me, it wasn't that crazy. I think for what people were, in the crypto world specifically, is where they got wiped out 80%. But in my opinion, if you're trading stuff that isn't Bitcoin, that's a risk you take. Now there are some people that said they were on 1.5x leverage, which to be fair is a reasonable amount, right? Like it's not 50x. I would be pissed too. Like if that was me, I would feel upset about that. But it just is another reminder, man, like don't be doing leverage if you don't know what you're doing, man. And if you're not up for losing 100%, you should not be messing around with that stuff. And
no, but literally, right? Because think about it. If you're 50 times levered, a 2% move down wipes you out, right?
Wipes you out.
And
also, they can. It's not worth the stress, in my opinion.
This is investment advice.
It is, exactly. Yeah, it's mental health advice. And the last thing I was going to say, Trung, was that if we go back to our Sailor discussion with Sailor on the pod, if you remember, I was very, ETH was, in full transparency, my biggest position for a long time. It is no longer, but it was for a long time. And I was like in 2021 in the weeds, playing around with all the stuff, DeFi, stable coins, NFTs, like all the stuff that was interesting technology-wise was happening on ETH, on Ethereum. And I was asking about the technology side, and I still think a lot of those things are very interesting. But where I've netted out to is most of the price action in all these markets is sentiment-based, is story-based, is speculation mostly, in my opinion. And so regardless of what's happening on, countries using stable coins and all that stuff, to me, it was still, the price action was based on, will this number go up in the future, essentially, right? And so I'm oversimplifying, but that's kind of where I netted out. And I was having a text back and forth with a friend of mine who said going through all of these ups and downs has made him essentially a Bitcoin maxi, because it will, and I saw people talking about this online, like the more you go through the big drops, it makes you realize, like, I felt pretty good because my position is very conservative now. Like I just basically hold Bitcoin on crypto side pretty much. And I'm okay with holding that very, very long term. So it takes out that whole decision making where I'm like, oh, it's down 10%. Oh, it's down 3%. What do I do? It's too much stress for me personally. So that's how I felt. I felt okay about it. But obviously,
just confirm you're not investment advice, but
Definitely
maybe
not.
A little bit of advice. I think what Bilal said is best there. It's not investment advice. It's mental health advice. So
there we go.
If you can handle it, more power to you.
And I will say, this was a tweet from Elon Musk today, just on the same topic in response to someone. Trung, we want to get this on the pod. That is why Bitcoin is based on energy. You can issue fake fiat currency, and every government in history has done so, but it's impossible to fake energy. Trung, that could be coming out of Michael Saylor's mouth. You know what I mean? That is, you can't print energy. That is the new, put it on a t-shirt sort of vibe. You know what I mean?
You can't
print energy. Is great.
No, I remember you sent that this morning, and I was like, yo, this is you literally said this sounds like Michael Saylor.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, if you get technical, not print energy, you could get fairly cheap energy as well. But that's another, that doesn't fit.
But
the
it's
narrative.
Still connected to it's still gated by physics, right?
There
That's
you go.
The whole point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, was there anything else on that? I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, real quickly, the next day it was then a tweet come out, and everything was apparently a misunderstanding between Trump.
Well, this is what we're going to get into
now.
We're going to get into it now.
And so things did bounce back. And so this is going up and down, up and down. It's nothing new. We've got this volatility. We've seen this volatility before. Let's get into the rare earths discussion now, Trung. And specifically...
Well, you touched on it, Bilal. You said that the next day they sent out actually... two things. They sent out JD Vance on Saturday to basically, to moderate the trade war tones, right? And but here, I mean, something that people need to notice here is China is not backing down, right? And this is where the rare earths come in. China spent the last decade preparing for this. Actually, the first rare earth incident was actually in the early 2010s. If you look at something, it happened with Japan. There's a dispute over these islands in the Pacific region between Japan and China, and China basically tried to squeeze Japan with the rare earths because Japan also does a lot of high-end manufacturing. So no, this isn't the first time they've done it. So The Economist actually had an article probably a month ago talking about China weaponizing rare earths. And just to be clear here, America weaponizes the US dollar. America's weaponizing semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Every country, if it can, will weaponize what they have leverage on. And that ultimately is the question. Do you have leverage on it? Can you weaponize it? And if you do, though, what is the blowback going to be? So the thing about rare earths is that we've talked about it, rare earths are not actually rare. It's just very difficult to refine them. And it's because it's a very dirty, dirty process. And China has kind of thrown all environmental concerns out the window to corner this market, which, by the way, America used to own. So in the 80s and 90s, this was America's market. They were like the large 90% producer. Now it's swapped. China is a 90% refined producer of rare earths. You need rare earths and their magnetic features, attributes for semiconductor equipment, military equipment, aeronautic equipment, cars. So these are very important for the global chain. But remember, China also needs these, and if they just hamper the entire world, there'll be blowback on it. The same way America weaponizing the US dollar has led to blowback and people moving. You remember the chart we brought up a couple of weeks ago? The gold has overtaken US treasuries as the central bank reserve. Same idea, right? People saw America weaponizing, and they've known it. This has been going on for decades. The US dollar does whatever 60% of global trade. That means that is a huge choke point for the American economy, or for the American empire, if you want to call it empire, the American way of doing things. That was their choke point. So the rare earth thing is interesting, right? And it's Bilal, to your point earlier, you had said they moderated their tones, right? Trump did put out I think it was on Sunday, he put out a Truth Social post, which everybody kind of predicted. They're like, spoke to Xi Jinping, and he doesn't want a great recession in China, and neither do I. And right, but the tone wasn't great. And so if you actually, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce has actually put out a post recently also, and they're basically saying, we will, if it's a trade war, we will fight till the end. But if there's room for negotiation, they're leaving the door open. So, I mean, China's been preparing for this, right? Like Deng Xiaoping, the paramount leader after Mao, basically picked Chinese leaders up until Xi essentially had said, China's whole thing is to bide its time. It's just slowly, don't be loud, just roll in the come up. But when it's time, and it's time to do battle, they're going to be ready. That was China's whole thing, right? This is the whole point about China. It's a 5,000-year-old civilization, and you have to think about the mindset they have. They're in it for the long game. That's how they think about it. The leadership, the CCP, and so the rare earth thing, it might backfire because unlike semiconductor equipment, it's actually a lot easier to build up a rare earth supply chain from scratch. I read somewhere, I think The Economist said that in 3 years, America could replace everything they needed. But again, let me ask you, Bilal, do you think America can eat 3 years of pain? Like just knowing the mindset, right? Is like your inflation in vehicles, in planes. You might not get your iPhone on time. It's like all these things that if you were to bring back rare earths to America or allied countries, so they're invested in Canadian miners. North America has a lot of these rare earth kind of assets, but you still have to bring up the refining capacity. Australia is a big one. But a key thing I want to point out here is China is so good at refining that if America and its allies is to compete, there's going to have to be subsidies. So again, the taxpayer is going to have to pay for this. They're going to have to guarantee floor prices. So one of the companies, you mentioned Chamath earlier, he was a big one talking about, I think, MD Materials. The U.S. government bought, I believe, 10% in that company. but the Department of Defense has guaranteed 10%. Guaranteed a price floor on the rare earths. And that means if you're buying at an uncompetitive price, the taxpayers are paying the difference. So these are all things to consider. But I think this is China's biggest point of leverage in the trade war right now because of rare earths contribution to semiconductor equipment, defense contractors, airplanes and vehicles, drones. So things of this nature, they can play this card, but the rest of the world is responding to it. So yeah, I think that's where we're at with that. You have any thoughts on that?
No, well, just to tie it back to what we originally talked about with the drop, I have this tweet here that says the largest crypto liquidation history and a $2.5 trillion loss of S&P 500 market cap appears to have been driven by one big misunderstanding. That was kind of the idea of this misunderstanding. No, nothing more to add to what you just said there. I just think I think most people, including myself, it's a reminder mainly to myself, are just way too in the weeds with all this stuff. Things are going up and down. There's a lot of volatility in the political world right now. And understandably, if it's a full-time job, I understand. But for most people, it's not. And I think everyone is becoming very jumpy. And I was with someone on the Friday, actually, when I was out, and he was talking about, I don't want to call him out, but he was really concerned about the government. And he's like, well, I'm telling my money guy that I need to sell everything. And I'm like, man, this is just, take it easy, man. This is before this was announced,
Before this weekend, yeah. So maybe he did sell everything. Maybe he got.
No, and I was like, actually, I'm not a fan of having a money guy. That's normally a red flag anyway. But the idea of, actually, in those cases, it might be good to have a money guy because they stop you from selling everything, right? In a chaotic, emotional mess that you might be in at that moment. So yeah, I just think, I think this is going to ride out a little bit. I think zooming out, China is in quite a strong position, to be honest. I think the big one that people have talked about, they have their own problems, don't get me wrong, especially demographic wise, they have some issues there. But energy wise, as we talked about before, they've just got a massive head start, and I think they're going to be in a good position to provide the energy that's
needed.
A
great point. Something to bring up about that is that they are hugely on the, not only did they secure the rare earths we've talked about last 10, 20 years, I mean, they're leaders in nuclear, leaders in solar, but they've been able to underwrite that by being the world's largest coal consumer. I mean, they do 60% of the coal consumption in the entire world, right?
Yeah, so, that's wild.
And here's how they played it. They're basically funding NGOs in Europe, climate change NGOs, legitimately.
They're buying
right?
certificates for clean air.
Dude, it's unbelievable, the long game they played. Yeah, they're funding NGOs in North America and Europe to push climate change. I mean, listen, we got to deal with climate change, but China is dealing with it while also being the world's largest coal consumer, right? And they played it extremely well because they basically deindustrialized a lot of Europe. Because when you transition to climate and the grid's not ready, as we talked about with the Iberian Peninsula, remember the Portugal and Spain had that blackout? They're blackout because solar, wind, and clean energy is a very different type of grid requirement than the existing one built on nat gas and coal. So China long gamed it, kind of helped the slow process of deindustrialization of Europe. While they're consuming a ton of coal, they're funding these climate initiatives abroad. But yeah, in the long run, they're very good at energy. But here's an important point about that, Bilal. There's this idea of the AI, America's AI stack versus China's AI stack, right? The thing about America's AI stack is because this is kind of like the inverse of DeepSeek. DeepSeek didn't have the best chips, so they had to innovate, right, on methods. America doesn't have this boundless energy right now. Or America has boundless energy. It does. Commercially, though, it's been handicapped by a lot of regulations. But America is one of the, I think, either number one or two in nat gas and oil production in the world, right? So it has boundless energy. But commercializing and bringing it to market and usage at the end point, there's a lot more regulation around that. But that also means, though, that these chips and the AI stack they're building has to be quite energy conscious at the moment. That's more exportable because a lot of places, at this point, no place in the world really, outside of the Middle East, has China's I mean, no place has China's nuclear commitment right now, the commitment they have. I mean, France gets 60% of their energy and electricity from nuclear, but like the 10-year projection isn't going to be like what China's doing. But the AI stack for America actually makes more sense for a lot of the world because there isn't, this massive nuclear build out happening. So that's something I think about.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Just zooming out from that, Trung, before we wrap that up, how do you feel when all of this is happening for you on a personal level, when you're, like you're feeling towards like I'm sure you're invested in the markets and stuff as well. So just when these massive drops are happening or the volatility of Trump saying something, like what goes through your mind?
You know what it is? Like, we've talked about this a lot actually, because we went through a good cycle on this since we started this podcast. Man, I just like, dude, you guys ate a massive drawdown on the crypto stuff. I think that actually prepared you. If you
you're right. Everything else feels like small, right? Yeah, like a 2% like, on the stock market is like, what? Who cares?
And you remember what it feels like to actually just hold through it, right? It's just like, so like, yeah, I'm kind of in the mindset. I think in 5 years everything will be fine. Like all these movements, I think it'll be up broadly. I think AI will have shaken out. I think the fiat, the sailor kind of thesis of governments printing willy-nilly, that's never going to end. Actually, a great tweet somebody put out was, when you look at this AI build-out, which is now whatever 2% of US GDP, they're printing money essentially to facilitate it, right? So if they need to keep printing for the next decade to ensure that they can leap the chasm to this, utopian productivity world, I mean, that's just a money sink. I mean, Bitcoin's going to be a sink for all that, right? Gold's going to be a sink for that. And think legitimately, like, don't be corny, but actually think longer term about it. And I'd say that's the end of that. Nothing else to say on the rare earth note. I can end off on the Scotland stuff if you guys want.
Yeah, let's just do one last thing. I just want to share the video from Anduril, and then just so people have it and they can look it up properly themselves, because it was kind of related to what you just said. And then I do want to hear about Scotland. This was one of my favorite tweets from the guy Arthur McWaters. Said, "This goes so insanely hard. I effing love this country." To me, I shared this. Oh, you're on mute again. This image of Palmer Luckey, this looks like he just came out of a Kanye fashion shoot or something.
Or a Halo video game, right?
Or a Halo video
game.
That thing
looks
100%.
Unreal.
And so this is Anduril Industries video. Can you see?
I mean, it looks like a video game.
This looks like a video game, right? It's like Call of Duty or... I'm going to make it large because... So this is what soldiers on the front lines will be seeing, yeah? Okay, so you guys get the idea. This is like
get the idea.
Science fiction.
Well, the first comment from Bill Spackman, the cartels are about to find out why America doesn't have health care.
Exactly.
You know what?
Anyway,
let's hold on the Scotland thing, because I'd like to talk about Greg's with you and Jack.
All right, cool. That's fine. Yeah, let's get Jack involved.
But thank you, man. Yeah, we'll get we'll get back together next week.
Good to have you back, Andy. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And tell us in the comments how you pronounce Edinburgh versus Edinburgh.
Sorry, guys. My bad. My North American bad.
No, you got to do what you got to do. Anyway, good chat, Trung. Thanks for breaking that down for us. Hope you guys enjoy that. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
Peace.
Bye-bye.